Well, this is just gonna be a quick video going over one of the settings in Overwatch that people don't really know about. So I would put this setting at greater importance than this setting, the enable high precision mouse input. Everybody knows about this one, but they don't really know about this other setting. So if you go to controls and you go to a hero like BAP, any hero that has like a recoil animation, they'll have this. So you see the setting recoil recovery aim compensation. It's on by default, and it sounds okay. And for most new players, they might look up what it is, and it sounds neat when you first start out. And most people will recommend to new players to keep it on. I would recommend to keep it off from the beginning, even if it's harder. You need to like practice harder things to improve faster, and you don't want to be like unlearning bad things. But okay, so basically what this is doing is when you have this on and you shoot, you see how it immediately goes back to the same spot? Now that's universal, that's the animation. But what the setting is doing is if you're trying to adjust for the recoil, it will ignore tiny adjustments within like the adjustment window. So if you're doing like a big movement, you see like it won't ignore a big movement. But if you're doing a tiny movement, now you can't really tell what's happening, but I'm keeping my crosshair in exactly the same place, and I'm controlling the recoil, and it's ignoring some of my mouse movement. So my crosshair slowly goes up, which means after about 5 shots, I'm gonna have to lift my mouse, reposition my hand to get an optimal, wrist position and all that. Oh my god. And you build up muscle memory on this. Yeah, I haven't warmed up. You build up muscle memory on this, and it kind of fucks you over, especially when you're trying to swap between the two. I would say it fucks you over going to this setting way more. So ignoring your movement just really doesn't sound good to a good player. Like it's saying, a new player, they're not gonna micro adjust to what their reticle is doing. They're not setting up for the immediate next shot based off of what they just saw while the recoil is playing, But a good player will do that. So if you turn it off, now I'm gonna do the same thing where I control the recoil, and see, there's something a little difficult here. Well, the first thing you notice, that was a lot of shots, and I didn't move up at all. You can't really see, but my mouse is in the same exact position. My arm and my wrist are in my optimal position, and I have like complete fingertip control and like dragging into my palm while I'm doing that. Compared to the other one where I need a reset after a couple shots. Which a decent player will probably be able to do that fairly consistently, but it's just a slight nerf to your potential aim, in my opinion. But the other thing you'll notice that I don't really think about when I'm used to my sense is not only do you have to control the recoil, you have to control the reset. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically dragging down during the recoil, and then I push back up to reset the recoil. But that's all within my optimal mouse grip style, So there's one other hero, so it's on Ash, but I would say if you're immediately adjusting if you're adjusting your shot immediately and trying to like spam it out there, like you're kind of aiming wrong. It's borderline on Ash, but on someone like Widow, it really would indicate that you're doing something bad. Now I turn it off anyways, but for most players it's not gonna matter if you turn it off or on because you're not shooting and then going, oh, adjust the recoil, line up in the next headshot, take your shot. You know, you're shooting, whether the recoil does fine, you're waiting for your charge, you line it up, and then you take the next shot. You know, maybe you have, you know, a couple extra milliseconds of, you know, maybe like a couple tens of milliseconds to aim, but that really is unimportant. But for a hero like McCree or Cassidy, and I don't, this is off by default, so when I reset my settings, it turns on. I mean, it's on by default, it turns on. So when you go to a hero like McCree, you are actually lining up your shot immediately after whatever shot you just took. So what this does is it just allows you to get one or two more headshots, you know, throughout the game that you just like physically couldn't have gotten. So I aimed right at the net, and then I tried to immediately take my next shot with the setting on. It's going to try to ignore the movement, so it's not going to adjust the head unless if I do some drastic movements. And you know, this may influence why a lot of people do a flick with vertical instead of just purely doing horizontal, because if you and my aim is completely trash because I haven't played in a couple days, but if you're doing complete vertical, which is like what you would see in most games, like even if you're doing a flick, they're not really doing a whole lot of vertical flicking, but you see the like Nike checkmark aim style from Overwatch players a lot because the settings on. I think it honestly influences it. But yeah, when you're doing this method, you can make little micros, and if you just hit a neck shot, you can go to a headshot pretty easily, and you definitely are like lining up your shots instantaneously. Or in my case, not lining up your shots because your aim sucks. But yeah, that's basically the tutorial. Definitely, I think is an underrated setting. It definitely matters. BAP, it matters a whole lot. Like that's the difference between actually hitting a 3-round dink or, you know, just not hitting anything. You'll see a lot of players with this on, they'll start from the chest and just let it go up and get like one headshot. But if you turn it off, you can really just 3-dink people back to back with no resetting. You just ding 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 ding, you know. So it definitely increases your aim potential, and the better your aim, the more I would recommend changing that. Like the finer you can control your mouse, the more I would recommend changing it over.